Good day. This is Richard Wexler, and this is Caring in America, the podcast for caregivers and care recipients. Folks, the ones that have been listening to me for a long time know why I'm here, know why I'm doing this. 20 years ago, my wife and I married later, two small kids, and four parents still with us in their 80s that we thought were doing great. Nope. In the summer of '05, we start getting phone calls that turns into four phone calls, each one of them pretty darn ill. We then start a care journey, taking care of all four of them until the last parent passes in 2019 at 96. So that lasted 14 years. So I had to figure out what care was, started reading a lot, eventually started educating folks about the complexities of aging and care, initially in Northern California where I was, and then eventually all over the country. Started this podcast 2 years ago, trying to keep that education going. And earlier this year, started our national foundation, A Plan to Age, where we're doing exactly that, helping people understand they really should be planning for aging, whether it's older loved ones or themselves, unlike my wife and myself. So we have two special guests with us today. I'm going to introduce them both by their bios. First, Tiffany Phelan. She is the owner of Senior Helpers with locations in California's Central Valley and in Mesa and Scottsdale, Arizona. She has more than 20 years in the senior care community industry. She has trained hundreds of professionals and family caregivers on how to support loved ones living with Alzheimer's, dementia, and other chronic conditions. She has worked with over 5,000 families as they navigate the challenges of aging. Her passion is helping families find peace of mind and supporting seniors in living safely and independently at home. We also have Scott Fisher. He earned a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Arizona State University and has over 30 years of experience in healthcare, including nursing administration, education, mental health, and home health. His company, Options for Senior Living, was founded in 2003 to provide a professional guidance service to families and professionals who are seeking assisted living and long-term care, excuse me, services for a senior. He has served thousands of families in the past 22 plus years, many of those who've had a loved one suffering from some form of dementia. Are you both there?
I'm here, Richard. Thank you so much for having us.
I'm here. Good to talk to you today, Richard. Thank you for having us in.
You're welcome. So, Tiffany, where are you physically sitting today?
I'm physically sitting in our office in Mesa, Arizona, where it's nice and warm um, in the summer today. So
Yeah, how warm is nice and warm?
I would say 105, give or take, maybe.
Out. Yeah, that's nice and hot, not warm, ma'am. And Scott, where are you sitting?
I'm about 20 minutes from Tiffany in the city of Chandler, Arizona, working from the office today too, Richard. So yeah, I think we're heading to 110 later today, maybe 112 or so tomorrow. So they're turning the heat up here.
Yeah, and I thought it was, I'm outside of Boise, Idaho. I thought it was bad. It's about 95 today. So I guess, I'm in the
Ouch.
minor leagues compared to both you guys. So I want to ask some questions. I mean, you guys both do different things, but very needed things within senior care. Tiffany providing care in the home, and Scott providing guidance to senior living. Tiffany, can you tell our audience more of what you do on a daily basis?
Absolutely. So, what Senior Helpers does is we provide caregivers in people's homes, and we're always really excited when we get to meet new families and guide them through this journey, which is really what brought us to you, Richard. If you recall, we do both Scott and I do quite a bit of the same thing that you do in guiding families and helping make sure that while they're navigating their journey in the way that's right for them, at least they have some resources and some knowledgeable folks to help them along the way.
No, that's great. And obvious, when I talk with folks, I tell them there's basically three pieces of care. It can be in your home, it can be at a community, or maybe a family member is going to take care of mom, dad, whether it's mom and dad's home in the family member's home, etc. Same question for you, Scott. Can you tell our audience more of what you're doing on a daily basis?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. When we're asked to get involved in a situation, either through a family member reaching out to us, or perhaps it's the senior themselves calling maybe about their spouse, we provide a face-to-face assessment or a one-on-one conversation with that decision maker, that family, that senior. And as we go through a process with them, Richard, to ascertain what their priorities are, a lot of times there's questions to be asked by them and answered by us. Is it time? When do you know that it's time for assisted living or long-term care? We help them handle those questions and then provide them a list or a guidance of facilities that would meet and match their priorities that they've given us. We then accompany them through a process, even going on the tours with them, setting all that up, being their guide, being their sounding board as we walk them through the process. After 20 plus years of this, it's clear that my clients are people my own age. I'm 62. I'm living it as you have, Richard, with the aging mom and in-laws that are in senior and long-term care. So most of my clients are the adult kids. They're not the seniors directly. They receive the benefit of our guidance services. Our services are free to family. We're paid on a contractual relationship with senior living operators all over the greater Phoenix area.
No, and that's fantastic. And you actually answered one of my questions. I'm not sure if most folks know that what you do from a placement standpoint doesn't cost them a cent. Yes, they're going to have to pay the community that mom or dad moves into, but they're not going to pay you for your services. I'm going to address this next question to Tiffany. And Scott even said, I believe you guys are like 20 minutes apart. You guys cover, as I say, there's three pieces to this care puzzle. You guys are dealing with two of them, which are so extremely important. Tiffany, how are you guys working together for the benefit of the individual, the person that's getting care, for the benefit of the family?
Sure. So, and I think, and Scott mentioned, everybody needs something different. We come into a family situation and it's already established. There's relationships. Sometimes there's children who are willing to step up, or maybe just step up part of the time, right? Sometimes there's not. Every family is really unique in what they can afford and what they're interested in and what the relationships are like. And so, one of the ways that Scott and I work together is to make sure that families really know what all of their options are. And then to touch on that last part of the puzzle that you talked about, the families being able to provide care, that is something that Senior Helpers has been actually very invested in for the last 5 or 6 years. We have really ramped up our ability to train our family caregivers. So, a lot of folks who utilize Senior Helpers caregiving services, they utilize us part time. So, what happens the rest of the time? Our caregiver will go in and maybe, let's just say, as an example, 4 hours a day, 3 days a week. What happens those other days? How can the family feel like they know what they're doing when we're not there, to try and maybe even stretch out their budget of being able to provide care for a longer period of time for their loved one? And so we actually have training centers in all four of our locations where we bring family members in and we train them alongside of our professional care staff to make sure that whatever care is being provided in our absence by family members is still being provided at the professional level of care.
No, that's awesome. And with a planned age and what I've been doing for 20 years, educating people, we talk about this third piece where the family's going to be providing the care, and we'll talk about planning more in a few minutes. And when you're not planning and you haven't saved the money for in-home care or a community, and then all of a sudden it winds up on you. What you're doing is awesome. I mean, having been there 4 times, and especially when we first started with the first parent, it was extremely difficult to really understand what we were doing, how we were going to do it, how we were going to have a life on top of that, etc. So, Scott, the same question to you. And working with Tiffany, um, how do you see you guys pairing together coming from the two different worlds?
Yeah, for years I didn't see this, and I have to really give my wife a lot of credit that really we are working with the decision makers, the adult kids, so many of the times, and a lot of our marketing, Richard, is really education, outreach, lunch and learns. Any of the social media that we do is very educational in its nature. And so there's a lot of people that call us that are not ready for placement. They're just getting their resources together, as Tiff said. And so it's a perfect opportunity for me to introduce them to Tiffany and her team. Prior to really wanting to move out, that they thought that might be the only option for them, so we can help create solutions earlier, as people are reaching us earlier in the conversation. I'm imploring people, please call me before the crisis. Well, maybe they're not quite ready to move yet, and so therefore we can help them get the right resources up front. Afterwards, if Tiffany's got somebody on service, and perhaps they're starting to really max out their care, or financially becomes untenable at home any longer, there's an opportunity for her and I to work together and transition that family out of the home into into their long-term care solution, with her team's help and guidance, and so we can take the ball and run with it after they've carried it for a while. So there's a lot of play back and forth between us. Our local fire departments are screaming uncle because the amount of calls that the community's placed on them for lift assist and medical interventions, and we're both engaging in a project that would help alleviate some of that. And I'm counting on Tiff and her team to kind of train us in some assessment tools that are really helpful to help people get the right picture of what they're going to need in the future.
Sure. No, and that's great. I talk about multiple words that are four-letter words that people just don't like. And one of those words is the word plan. So again, before we talk more about plan, Scott took something out of my head that I want to ask now. In that, I'll start with Tiffany, then I'll go to Scott. Tiffany, what percentage of clients you're working with come to you before there's an emergency, before mom fell down the stairs?
Oh, well, before, so not a high enough percentage. Um, and I think even if it's before an emergency, it's usually later than it should have been. And I say that because it's usually, even if there's been no objective emergency, oftentimes family is already stressed out. And there are a couple reasons that I've come up with over the 2 decades of working with people that people put off that plan, why that word is so scary to them. And I really think that delving into that idea of grief, right? As soon as we admit that the aging is happening, all of a sudden we think about all these things that we don't want to think about with our parents, right? And so I think really that concept holds people back when they really should be moving forward.
No, and this is great. And folks that are listening, I always encourage you, share this information, family, friends, coworkers, folks at church, whatever, wherever you go. This is fantastic information. Same question for you, Scott. What percentage of people come to you before mom's flat on her back in the hospital, off to skilled nursing, and then you're getting the call?
Yeah, probably a third to a half. I wish it was more. But there is some percentage that are starting to feel the pain of it, but there hasn't been a crisis yet. So they're starting to read the signs. I've done a workshop, a presentation for years called Storm Clouds on the Horizon, Richard. It's really just a metaphor for life on how many things are happening. And if they're seen individually by families, they may miss that a big crisis is coming or the big storm is on its way. And so when mom misses her medicines once or twice or gets lost driving, all by itself, it's not a big deal. But it becomes a huge deal when mom gets lost and they find her halfway to Tucson, or she's turned the heat up in the house and dad's gotten really sick because he's been overheated, where there's a real crisis at hand. So we try to teach people to read the signs sooner than later, and hopefully they make that call to one of us so that we can get the right resources going for them and help alleviate or avert a bigger problem later.
And thank you, Scott. And folks, I mean, I've been saying this for a long time now. I really, really, really encourage you to plan. What does that mean? It means the family conversation. We have this on our website, a plan2age.org. Remember that two is the number two, a plan2age.org. This family conversation that is probably going to be multiple conversations that your family has. It'll teach you what you do if there's one adult child, if there's multiple siblings, how you handle that with mom and dad, or if you're mom and dad, how you handle that with the adult children. Because what we're talking about, folks, costs money. But if unless you want to move halfway across the country, which is happening to so many folks, to move back in with mom to take care of her, dad's already passed, mom needs care around the clock. How are you going to manage that? What Tiffany does, what Scott does is really going to help you. But again, that four-letter word plan is so important. So Tiffany, I'll start with you again. So we talked about this a little bit. Help our audience understand. A phone call comes into you guys. What's the process you do? And is that phone call normally from the adult children? What's your process from there?
So I would say about 80% of the time it's from the adult child, right? And then maybe 10% of the time it's the senior themselves, and 10% it's usually like a family or a friend and somebody else other than the adult child. But most often it is. So the first thing that we do when someone calls us is we really want to understand what's going on. And I don't mean what's going on, meaning my mom needs help taking a bath. I mean, we're going to learn that, right? But what we really want to know is what's really happening. Where do the kids live in relationship to their parents who need help? What's the relationship like? Right? Is it warm? Is it tense? What are the parents like? Because if we're going to select a caregiver at some point, we want to start to get an idea of who might fit well with that family. And the next thing that we usually talk about are what are the goals for the children? And our conversation with families happens really in two parts. So the first part is that phone call that happens when somebody reaches out for the first time. And the second part of the conversation happens in what we call an assessment, where we come out to the home and we meet with the senior themselves and ideally all of the members of their kind of care team. So if that's one child or a couple children, whoever the decision makers are. So the first thing on the phone call that we want to understand is what are the goals that this adult child has, because sometimes their goals and their parents' goals don't align, right? So I'll use the example of a gentleman we provided care for whose wife had passed away, who had fallen into a depression and was not wanting to shower. Okay. So the son's number one goal was, I need my dad to shower. And I think for those of us who've gone through that, we can really identify, okay, that's a practical need. But when we went in to talk to dad, who had an early form of dementia, we learned that really what was going on was this deep depression. That's when we learned that. And we also learned what was important to dad. And the number one most important thing to him was golf. He loved golf. And since he can't drive to the golf course anymore, he can't play golf and with the beginning dementia. So what we did is we put together a plan where the caregiver would come in and ask him to take a shower because she would get a hard pass on that. Instead, she came in and she said, "You know what? Would you like to go to the golf course and we can sit and watch the golfers on the bench today?" And he got so excited to do that. And she said, "You know what? Your clothes probably need some changing. So let me help you with that." And before everyone knew it, he took a shower and he was off sitting at the golf course. So our process really involves getting everybody's goals and putting them together into one care plan.
No, that's awesome. Thank you. And Scott, the same question. Is it usually the adult child that's contacting you guys? What's your process after that?
Yeah, it really is. And I would say probably the same 80% of the time, it's the adult child. When I start to hear the story and ask the family to give me a brief summary of what's happening, and it's usually on the phone at that point in time, my objective is to get a face-to-face meeting with someone. I think trust is achieved when two humans sit together and look to each other in person with compassion and understanding. And I believe that for decades of my work in healthcare. And so whether the adult kids are feeling the heaviness of the reality and they need to do something, they need to know they have an ally. So I want to do that in person if I can. I also want to see the parent or the prospective resident if I can, and in most cases we can do a face to face with them or actually meet them in their home so I can see how they're living and I can use my assessment skills and observation skills to pick up a lot of things about how people are living and choices that are being made and what kind of safety issues are at hand in the home. Um, but with if I can't see, I'll let the family member know if that would cause any disruption to mom or anxiety. Maybe mom's got some early onset dementia. There's some suspiciousness and a lot of questioning going on. That it's super important not to rattle mom's cage. I can work with the child directly, gather as much information as we can, and then we can start our process of identifying potential solutions for their long-term care. We set those appointments up, like I said, and take them through almost like a realtor would, Richard. We literally take them out to the on appointment and walk the buildings, walk these assisted living homes with them, and assuring them that we've got quality solutions in front of them every time we do that.
Now, again, both of you, this is fantastic information, folks. Again, please share this. We're getting close to wrapping up, and I have a couple more questions before we do. And again, I'll start with Tiffany. I would imagine establishing trust, building that rapport with the family is extremely important, and building a strong relationship with them, especially if you're going to have the care of mom, dad, grandparents for a while. Do you want to address that?
Building trust, absolutely. I think really for us at Senior Helpers, the most important part to building trust is listening and then promising what we know we can deliver. And so there's a couple parts to that, right? We always want to hear what's on someone's mind. And I think for as you know, you've had this experience. So you know that sometimes the first things that you're thinking about, you may never have done this before with your parent. And if you haven't, you don't really know what's to be expected. And so listening to what the expectations are, what the goals are, and being able to, as senior helpers, as our staff, being able to respond to that and say, hey, these things all sound great, we can absolutely do these things. It also leads us to one of the conversations that we'll have up front. What if someone's asking us to do something that we cannot do? And I can give you an example. What if somebody's asking us to climb up their palm tree and cut off the palm fronds as part of our sort of light home maintenance program, right? I choose that because it was requested of us. So the better thing to do than to promise something like that would be to be honest up front. And it can be for something as big and almost obvious as we don't cut palm fronds, or maybe even something like we can't force somebody to take their medication. We cannot force them to take a shower. Now, we can use all the tools in our tool belt. We can use our skills, our redirection techniques to get all of these tasks completed to the best of our ability. But being able to tell an adult child, which we've had to do, hey, I know it's really important to you that your mom takes a shower at exactly 8 a.m., but you know what? She doesn't feel like it. And you can't physically force a human being to do that. So, how do we have those honest conversations about what can and can't be done, and then come together and decide within the realm of possibility, what can we do that's going to meet all your, meet your reasonable expectations and give your parents the safe life that they want to be able to maintain living at home.
That's excellent. Scott, same question to you. Building that trust, building that rapport and strong relationship with the individual and the family.
It's crucial. That's why I said earlier. We've got to get in front of them, and that helps move that trust into the first step. We're walking a process or a journey with people. It could be a couple of weeks. It could be months of working with them and navigating through the emotions. I get to reflect a lot on my own personal journey with my mom in the middle of this, Richard. It sort of reminds me of what people are going through when I have my own story to reflect back upon about the challenges that our relationship has gone through. And seniors don't want things done to them. They'll be very clear. They'll put their heels down. And I insist that I say we always want to do things with and for and never to you. And we want to communicate with respect and integrity all the time to the senior themselves, because this is happening to them, whether they're making the final decision or not. This is happening, and it's how they perceive that goes a long way into their success in the final move. As far as the kids go, you got sometimes there's one single adult child making the decisions or leading the charge for the family. Sometimes you got half a dozen voices they all got to be heard, and they want to be heard. And so how do you balance all of that and prioritize and work through those issues? We really become social workers on the fly a lot of times. I have done family therapy in front of about 6 kids and their spouses and the parents in a living room at night, trying to air everybody's feelings and concerns. You have different motive by all the kids. You have guilt and frustration. Sometimes you got blended families. Richard, a lot of people are married for a second time and they have 2 sets of adult kids, and there's 2 different sets of priorities. And so to maintain all that, we really have to listen well, and we really have to be honest and stay down the middle on our priorities with them that they've identified for us to keep this whole thing on track sometimes.
Again, both of you, fantastic information. Final question, and then make sure we get contact information for both of you. So, adult children, maybe their children, go home to see the parents, see the grandparents for the summer. They notice something different. Mom's having difficulty walking. It's changed since they were there at Christmas. Maybe dad calls the son by his brother's name. Something's going on. What would you recommend? And I'll start with Tiffany. What would you recommend they do as the first steps when they see that, they hear that?
So I think the first step is that everybody should have trusted advisors, right? We have trusted advisors that handle our finances. We have trusted advisors that file our taxes. We have trusted advisors in our faith, right? So I think that there's no difference when it comes to aging, that I would encourage all your listeners, anybody, even if you don't have a loved one at this moment who needs help, maybe you have a friend down the line who's going to have a loved one who needs help. Have your list of trusted advisors, and Scott is certainly on that list. I'm on that list. Um, People are welcome to call us. We've fielded, I'm sure Scott's also fielded questions from people who aren't even in our area, who probably
Mhm.
won't become clients of ours. I've had folks listen to radio spots and things I've done, and just call and ask some questions. And so just have those trusted advisors that you can utilize, or you can recommend out if you hear of somebody who needs that direction.
No, that's fantastic advice. Last one for you, Scott. Same question. What would you say?
Yeah, I love that suggestion, Tiffany, that everybody get your advisor now and start to hear. It's really very similar, Richard. I just feel like um, we have to do 2 things as adult children. We have to come to grips with our own feelings and the reality that our parents are not going to be with us forever. We don't know any other reality other than we've always had our parents with us, and so when we are addressing their aging and their changing and the decline that happens naturally, we have to come to grips with our own feelings and maintain our objectivity. A third party can really help us maintain objectivity in that. If there's strained relationships in there, a third party can really be a huge help. I got a third party to help me with my own mom this past year because mom and I were just having a lot of problems managing our relationship, and some of it was old, and it's still, it's not fully healed in this lifetime. And so I'm just a big, I come from my nursing background was in mental health and behavioral health. And so, Richard, I'm always drawn to the psychosocial side of this, the real emotional and spiritual impact that aging has on us as families. And my mom has great anxiety about, her future, her health decline. And I have, challenges with her anxiety and the reality of the needs she has. So it's a complex pot, and we're in it every day with families as we do live it ourselves.
Wow. No, this has been great, folks. Again, pass this on. This has been fantastic information. You're getting a lot of information from both Tiffany and Scott, from both in-home care and the placement to a community perspective. If I can, again, just say anything, get ahead of this, talk to your family. Or when we age, it's a good thing. When I talk in front of people, I ask people how many people are older today than they were tomorrow, than they were yesterday. They laugh. I mean, it's a good thing to be older today than it was yesterday. But reality is, I use a pretty big number. 95% of us are going to need some form of care. And that can be a few hours for someone, multiple years for someone else. Most of us, it's going to be someplace in the middle. So you need to know great folks like Scott and Tiffany that are out there. But again, 4-letter word, you need to plan. So, Tiffany, contact information, website, phone number, email, what would you like to give out?
Absolutely. So the first thing I can suggest to people is to just give us a call. It's not just me. Every single person who works in my organization and answers the phone is able to answer any of the questions that I answered for you and even more. So our phone number is 480-360-4141. There's also our website, which is seniorhelpers.com. And then you can put in the zip code of care and find exactly where who's going to assist in your loved one's area, right? So those are two ways to get in touch with us. And then my email is tphelan, so tphelan at seniorhelpers.com if anybody prefers that way.
No, that's awesome. Same question, Scott.
Thanks, Richard. We're at optionsforseniorliving.com. When you go to our website, you're going to see a great picture of my wife and our two daughters. We're a family business covering the greater Phoenix area. And it's our message is our family is here for your family. My email, you can reach us via the website and our email. The office phone number is 602-845-1320. We pick up the phone 7 days a week. People don't, family challenges are not limited to Monday through Friday. So we're available when people need us.
No, and again, I want to thank both of you and folks. Until we talk again, have yourself an awesome day.